Welcome, everybody. Today we are talking about the book Contagious, Why Things Catch On by Jonah Berger. He is a professor at Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania. And this book is a great way to learn how to make your product, idea, music, whatever it is you're trying to share, how to make that catch on. You can think about this as if you want a video to go viral, if you want people to share your tweet or post or article or listen to your music. This will give you a framework on how to do that. So this is going to be a bit of a book club episode. If you guys like this, I read a ton of books and I can do this for other books that will help you on your path, whether that's music or otherwise as a creative. So starting off, we have the 6-step framework. He calls it STEPS, STEPPS, and that stands for social currency, triggers, emotion, public, practical value, and stories. And thinking about it in that way as steps is helpful. That's how I remember it off the top of my head. So let's get into the first one on social currency. Now, the idea here with social currency is you want to ask yourself, does my product or idea make people feel good? And does it make people feel like an insider? Those are the two key questions for social currency. So starting off with social currency, we want to talk about inner remarkability. And you see this with products like Snapple, like Dove chocolates, or fortune cookies. And these are just some examples of products that have little facts or little tidbits of information that then cause you to immediately share them. So when you think about if you open up a Snapple tea and you see the fact on the bottom of the cap, you immediately tell someone that fact. And that's because the fact, it's not just a banal fact, it's usually a very interesting or a fact that people wouldn't know. Same thing with the fortune cookie, you immediately want to share that fact. So that's the first one. The second one is we want to leverage game mechanics. So think of airline miles or any of these programs where you get badges of distinction that separate you from other customers or fans. You can think about this also in the realm of awards. So whether that's Downbeat Awards, Jazz Times, Grammys, Oscars, etc. The thing about the awards is, once you've won the award, you have to tell people where you got the award from. So Downbeat benefits from people saying, hey, I won the Downbeat Rising Star Award. I won that award. And that shares the brand, the message of the company. So maybe it's an award thing you can do, but just something to distinguish your top fans or your top listeners from others is a way that they will share that distinction. Thirdly, we have the idea of making people feel like insiders. So this is giving them something that is exclusive and scarce. You see this with Disney. They have the Disney Vault where at certain times, for a certain limited amount of time, they open up old movies. This could be like Cinderella, Snow White, and at other times you cannot access those. So by doing that, it causes people to let their friends know if they might be interested in that this is the time to watch that. And it lets that company share that. Now you have to be careful here because you don't want to create a false sense of scarcity. If you do that too often, too early, then people will know that this isn't really a scarce product. And you see this with a bunch of other online digital products where they create a false sense of scarcity. We did this with our 6-figure audience course, but we had real scarcity. We opened it, once at that first part of the year, and then sometimes we did it twice a year. Right now it's not open. So by creating real scarcity, your audience then trusts that when you're opening up and you're saying, hey, this is a limited time, it's actually a limited time. Same thing with challenges that we do. Once that time period is done, it's done. You can't win the prizes, you can't win anything else related to that. So think about how you can create real scarcity and exclusivity, which makes your audience feel like an insider. The second part of our framework is triggers, and this is what makes people think about your product or idea. This is a super important one. We've seen it in a ton of examples, but I'll give you a musical example. The song Friday by Rebecca Black. I'm sure most of you, unfortunately, know that song. And if you look at the data for the tune Friday, as you would expect, when it first came out on Fridays, the song would spike. The listeners would spike. And that's because compared to other songs, when it was a Friday, you would be triggered just by the fact of it being Friday, to think of that song, especially when it first came out. Even now, when that happens and you're thinking about music, it might remind you of the Rebecca Black tune. So you want to think about how you can tie your product or idea to a trigger. Now you have to be careful. You don't want the trigger to be too general. You can't just tie it to the color red when there's a lot of things tied to the color red. So you has to be specific and clear. All right, a couple quick tips for you to think about how to create these triggers. First thing is you can use your competition as a trigger. So you can tie into their products and campaigns and then tie your idea to that. And then you piggyback off of their effort. There's a lot of smoking campaigns and anti-smoking campaigns that would play off of the smoking ads. Since the smoking companies had the money, anti-smoking campaigns would tie on to the brand awareness of the smoking company and then use that. Another thing to keep in mind, you want a trigger that is not associated with a lot of other things. So you don't want to tie into just the color red, for example, because a lot of things are red. You know, when Coca-Cola did this and they're tying into things like polar bears. Polar bears don't really have a connection with a drink company, right? So when you think polar bears and drinks, you're thinking Coca-Cola. You want more frequent triggers. So triggering something with coffee is going to be better than triggering with hot chocolate for a couple reasons. More people drink coffee, but also hot chocolate tends to be something that is consumed more in the holiday times, in the winter, whereas people consume coffee year round. So you want those frequent triggers to give more chances of people thinking about your product or idea. And lastly, you want to trigger near where the desired action is taking place. So let me explain this one. If you're doing an ad for a bath mat, for example, this is the example he uses in the book, and your ad is showcasing that you want to buy that bath mat, and you think about that every time you go to the bathroom. You're not going to buy the product in the bathroom. So it's a poor trigger, because when you get to the bathroom and you think about that product, the chances of you then exiting the shower and then going to buy the product are low. And then by that time, you probably will forget about it. So you want to tie your trigger where you want the desired behavior to take place. All right, so think about those elements for triggers, and this is one a lot of people miss, so there's a lot of opportunity here. Third in the framework, we have emotion. And the question to ask is, does this product or idea generate emotion? This is one in the realm of music that you really want to get right, since some would say the purpose of music is to generate that emotion. So you need to think about, how is my music generating emotion? And then also, how does that tie into its shareability? There's a few key things we want to think about that the data shows about emotion and how that ties into people's likelihood of sharing. Catchphrase here is, when we care, we share. So evoking certain emotions can increase or decrease shareability. Tying into an emotion like awe, this sense of wonder and amazement, is great for shareability. He says in the book it increases sharing by about 30%, whereas generating emotion such as sadness can decrease shareability. So there's a few things to think about here. It's not just positive emotion or negative emotion, but also this dimension of physiological arousal. So this just means whether we have that fight or flight sort of feeling. On the positive side, we talked about awe. That's a high arousal emotion, but so is things that generate excitement or humor. On the negative emotional side, but high physiological arousal, is things like anxiety or anger. That's why a lot of news stations, they try and evoke that anger or anxiety with their news stories, so that you'll share that news story and tell people about it. The emotions you want to avoid that can affect sharing, that can decrease your shareability, would be things like, on the positive side, contentment. If people are content and they don't feel any sort of physiological arousal, then they're going to be unlikely to share. They feel good. They're going to just go to something else. On the negative side, things like sadness. People that are feeling sad or depressed, they go in on themselves. They don't want to share their emotions. So this all leads to the idea that you want to focus your marketing on evoking emotions of positivity and high physiological arousal. Now, yes, you could also focus on negative emotions like anger and anxiety and physiological arousal, but as we know, that can create some issues such as what we see in our news cycles. So excitement, awe, wonder, humor. If you guys are enjoying this video so far, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you guys want to see more of these book club style videos, and I will do some more. I have a bunch of other marketing books that I've read that would be interesting, that I think you guys would get a lot out of, as well as other types of books that I can discuss on here and distill some of the lessons I've learned for you guys. So anyways, let me know, like and subscribe. Next up on the list, we have public. And this is the idea of, can people see when others are using my product or idea? We see this in Spotify. So in Spotify, you can see what songs your friends are listening to. And this helps with the idea of sharing, because we have this feeling as social creatures of wanting to do what others are doing. It makes it seem safe, and we're more likely to do that. On the live gigging side, you see this in the context of tip jars. It's always a good idea to seed your tip jar, to put a few bucks in, usually some of the higher ends, like $5 or $10. And that lets other people know that are passing by, hey, other people have tipped. So it increases your chance of getting another tip. If they don't see any money in there, they assume, oh, maybe these guys aren't that good. They haven't gotten any tips. If you're thinking of a specific product, you want to think of ways that the product can advertise itself. Think about Apple headphones, whether it's AirPods or the original headphones that we're plugging in. They distinguish themselves very easily with color. Whereas most people had black headphones, Apple is known for their white headphones. So if you saw someone far in the distance wearing white headphones, you knew they were Apple headphones automatically. If they wore black headphones, you wouldn't know necessarily what product. It didn't automatically advertise itself, whereas Apple did. Lastly, in the public category, you want to think about this idea of behavioral residue. And this is the idea that your product or idea lives on beyond you taking that action. So think about voting. Once you voted, you get the I voted sticker. And that lets other people know you've already taken the action of voting, but it lets other people know, hey, this person voted, and they see that behavioral residue as they go about their day in public. They see a bunch of other people have voted via the sticker, and it gives you a reason to share that as well. So you want to think of ways that you can generate that behavioral residue, and for your product or idea to live on beyond just people taking that action. Next up, we have practical value. Ask yourself, does this product or idea help others? And then ask yourself, how can I highlight this incredible information and package it in a useful way? The idea here is that useful things are important, and people will not only take these useful ideas, but they will share them around. The first one that should come to mind is about saving people time or money. If you can do that, if you can help out a friend or family member by saving them time or money, you are likely to share that idea that will help them achieve that. That puts you in a greater relationship with them. So this can be highlighting price comparisons, special deals, any way in which you can showcase why someone is going to get something special out of your product or idea. In the case of YouTube videos, here hopefully I'm highlighting the value you get from subscribing to this channel, watching the lessons, and hopefully you get something out of that. And if I do a good job, you are likely to share that video with maybe another guitarist, another musician, another friend who would get something out of this video. So that's the idea with practical value. It's very powerful. It's probably one we're all familiar with, whereas the other ones in this framework are not as obvious. One non-obvious detail here for practical value is the more niche your audience is, the more likely it is to be shared. So you can think about this in the case of jazz memes. If you have a friend who's a jazz musician, then it makes more sense to share jazz memes with them than if they are a casual musician or sort of play an instrument on the side. And this works in other ways as well. If you have a friend who is really into a specific type of cooking and you see an article on that specific type of cooking, you're going to share that with that friend. You're going to feel obligated to share it with them. Whereas if you have an article that's more general or broad, you won't have a specific person come to mind to share that with. So it might be a little counterintuitive here, but the more niche the audience or your product or video, the more likely it is to be shared, because a specific person will come to mind in your viewers and they will share to that person. So keep that in mind. And finally, we have in our steps framework, stories. Ask yourself, is my product or idea embedded in the broader narrative? Is there a story I can create around my product or idea that ties into a general cultural narrative? Now, what's powerful about stories is we can tie in a lot of information in an engaging way. We can connect our previous parts of our framework, whether that's social currency, emotion, practical value, all within a package of a story that someone else can then also transmit. So in this way, we take these ideas from this framework, and by sharing the story, we allow someone else to then share that just as powerfully. And this is really how things spread quickly. The important thing in stories is you want to make sure that your product or idea is essential to telling the story. If your product or idea is not essential, then it will be left out when people go to tell this story to their friends. So I'll give you an example. There is an ad in Egypt for a brand of cheese, and this company is called Panda. And they had an ad where someone's dressed up like a panda and then is giving someone cheese in the grocery store. It's one of these absurdist type of commercials, but in telling someone else about that story, you have to mention the panda. Otherwise, the commercial doesn't make any sense why you'd be telling someone. And in doing so, because the name of the company is Panda, it directly relates to that. The brand of cheese is Panda, and there was a panda in this story. So that's a good example of it. A bad example would be something like the Golden Palace, and this is a online gambling company. They had a stunt, but they claimed they weren't part of this stunt, but there was a diver in one of the Olympics who had a Golden Palace bathing suit, and he was not obviously part of the Olympics, but he just jumped into the pool. And when people told that story, Golden Palace being on the guy's bathing suit is sort of irrelevant. It's not tied to the guy, crashing the Olympics and diving into the pool. So that part of the story routinely gets left out, and it really made no significant impact. So make sure that when you're doing these advertising stunts or anything related to a story, getting people to share a story, you want to make sure your product or idea is essential to telling that story. If not, it will be left out. All right, so that is the steps framework. Just to recap, we have social currency for S, triggers for T, emotions for E, public for P, practical value for P again, and then stories. Now, if you want your music or your product or your idea to be shared, you have to know step by step how to make that happen. And this framework is a great way to think about whether you are hitting those elements that are necessary to get your idea shared. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, again, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'll see you in the next video. Sorry guys, real quick, I almost forgot. We need to announce the winner of this A Love Supreme John Coltrane vinyl record, and it is going to Will Rury. So you guys can check out his comment in the previous one. He's got a bunch of students in Hemet, California, and so hopefully this record will be listened by them and him, and it can inspire some future jazz listeners and lovers. So thank you guys all for commenting. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are fans, and I really do appreciate it. Hopefully there'll be more giveaways. You can also check out the vinyl challenge if you did not win this, and possibly win this among a whole bunch of other John Coltrane. So it's not lost yet. Check out the vinyl challenge coming up in this next 4 weeks. All right, I will see you guys in the next one for real this time. So excitement. A couple things about triggers. You can use your competition as triggers. So Marlboro did a great job of this with their anti-smoking campaigns. They would tie into Marlboro. Jesus Christ, I can't say that. Marlboro. The fuck do you say that?